Hello, everyone. This is Caesar and CISO with MTEK. I'm the CEO. I'm actually pretty excited about this session. The session that we're going to actually be talking about is, women in tech. So about 2 years ago, we started a foundation here at MTEK. The two foundations is one is Project Gratitude that helps veterans with numerous causes. And the second one is Women in Tech. This is really near and dear to my heart. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and for people that have been in this industry as long as most of us have, 8% of all impactful roles are women. So there is a huge disconnect. So we've decided to try to solve for that. And we're doing it based on building out scholarships at basically the senior level of high school, and our goal is to raise 100 million in 10 years. So if people want more information, please ping us. And we're looking for mentors, we're looking for donors, we're looking for a bunch of different things, and pretty excited about it. On this session, we basically have Sloane Keane, who is going to be moderating the session. She is the CEO of Big Brother, Big Sister. It is the largest mentoring organization in the state of California. And what I really like about what Sloane is doing is she's really kind of leaning into basically, really talking about the STEM programming and getting people into technology. So, let's get Sloane out here, and I'll let her kind of kick off who's going to be on the roundtable. So, thank you, Sloane.
Thank you, Caesar. I appreciate that. Yeah, it is an absolute pleasure to be the CEO of the largest mentorship organization here in the state of California. For those of you who don't know, Big Brothers Big Sisters has been around for over a decade or over a century. So we've been doing this a long time, and mentorship is a personal passion of mine. And so I was thrilled to be able to speak today because Caesar's right. In career fields, particularly for young women and young women of color, you can't see what you can't be. And what we're doing today is really exposing some particularly successful women within the field of technology to all of you. How did they get started? Where are they now? And what's on the future horizon for women in technology? There is nothing more important than telling our own story. And so today, it is such a pleasure to introduce the three women we have on our panel. We've got Shruti Tournatory. She is the head of business development at Sapphire Ventures. We have Jennifer Smith, who is the CEO and founder of Scribe. And I believe we have Didi Dayton, who is the partner at Wing Capital. And I believe Didi might be joining us a little bit later. But let's start with you, Jennifer. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in technology. Where are you today? And what's on the horizon?
Yeah, thanks. Well, first of all, really appreciate being here. I think if you had asked 22-year-old Jennifer, would she be on a panel talking about women in technology, she would have said, absolutely not. I knew nothing about technology when I first got started in my career. I was at McKinsey for 7 years, did a bunch of banking work, and then sort of found my way into technology, and was living in Silicon Valley at that point and just got really interested. I mean, in some ways, it's hard to be living here and to not get infected by the technology. And in particular, for me, kind of the early stage startup bug. I had so many friends who were just building and investing in early stage companies. And so I moved over first onto the investing side. I joined the $9 billion TMT hedge fund that opened up a $1 billion late stage venture vehicle, investing there. And then more recently, a venture capital firm called Greylock on the enterprise software side. But in a bit of an interesting role, I got really curious. Maybe this is the former consultant in me trying to understand why people bought software. I think we talk a lot on this side of the table about how to sell software. And I got really curious about the buyer's mentality and what are the problems people are trying to solve within companies. And so I talked to over 1,200 CIOs, CTOs, CDO type folks at large enterprises. I think a lot of the types of people who are in the audience today, just to try to understand, what problems are you trying to solve? What are you seeing in the market today? Where are you seeing gaps? What do you wish existed? And that's really what led me to found Scribe. I mean, again, I think if you'd asked me a few years ago, even would you have founded a company, I would have said, oh no, maybe that's something someone else would be doing. But I saw kind of a gap in the market, and I got really interested in it and said, well, gosh, if no one is doing this, then we're going to go ahead and build it. So we founded Scribe a few years ago. We're obviously a enterprise SaaS company based here in Silicon Valley. We make it really easy for people to capture and share what they know how to do. So the idea, what I had heard talking to all kinds of folks, was we have all of this valuable institutional know-how within our company. And right now, the only way we can capture it is to tell people to take time away from their jobs and write down what they know how to do. Or we hire consultants. By the way, I did a ton of this at McKinsey to run around and capture that for us. And so we said, well, what if we could use software? What if we could watch people do work, automatically capture what they know how to do, almost have that be digital exhaust? And so we now work with everyone from, kind of Fortune 2000 companies to Fortune 50 companies, and helping them understand, how do we capture the way that work is done today so we can get better insight and make better decisions around how we organize our processes tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you. I mean, obviously, Jennifer has a lot to share with us. She's had experience on both sides of the emerging tech fence. So we'll get back to her later and ask her some really poignant questions to help us all figure out how to do that best ourselves. But now I would love to hear from Shruti. Tell us a little bit about your story and your journey.
Absolutely. And thank you so much to Sloane and also the broader EvoTech team and Mark for having me today, and for frankly making this topic kind of a centerpiece in their overall forum today. I think it's terrific to see more and more of this dialogue. So in terms of my background, I think similar to what Jennifer was saying, I actually didn't necessarily have a tech background before ending up in tech. I had actually in undergrad majored in international relations and international economics, and I just loved research and writing and publishing stuff. I was kind of sort of a nerd that way. And I ended up getting my first taste of tech by joining IDC, which is the global analyst firm, which focuses on market research and market analysis specifically for the enterprise software field. And that was sort of what whet my appetite for tech. And I think once I clocked in a few years at IDC in the industry analyst world, I realized that even though I hadn't had, academically speaking, a tech background, I loved just the pace of innovation and dynamism that you saw in the tech industry. And fast forward a few years out, I did a few years as an analyst. Then I packed all my stuff, moved in my Jetta from Boston to California to come and get my MBA at Berkeley. And of course, ending up in the center of Silicon Valley, I had a chance to work both at Salesforce.com and also for several years as a strategy and product leader at SAP at one of the major locations that and hubs that SAP had in the US. And it was a terrific run working for a lot of large global companies that had really made a huge category and name for themselves in the enterprise software space. And the way I ended up in venture capital was not very, it wasn't really thought out or intentional. It was a little bit accidental. I was sort of at a phase in my career where I'd had this incredible opportunity to work across multiple continents at these global scale tech giants and really gotten a flavor for how you scale a business internationally. But something else that I was more and more hungry to do was to actually be more actively involved in startups. In my last few years at SAP as a product leader, I'd actually been working on a specific product line that involved working very closely with startups and integrating a lot of startup technology into the tech stack. My husband was doing a startup at the time, so I had a lot of friends in the industry, and I sort of had tasted blood in a way. And I got a sense for just the steep learning and frankly, the excitement that comes with being part of the startup ecosystem. So I set out to actually start researching VC-backed startups, thinking that I would take either a strategy or a product leadership role at a startup. But in the process, I got to know the Sapphire Ventures team. And it was around the same time that a lot of VCs were in the process of thinking through whether they should add operating teams in addition to investment teams to their roster. And Sapphire sort of said to me, hey, instead of joining another startup, which you can do, how about you join us? And then you have a chance to work with a whole bunch of startups. And it kind of took me back a little bit because I hadn't really thought about venture capital as a career route, but I knew that I wanted to work more closely with startups. And then it came down to a choice between working with a startup or working with an amazing portfolio of now what is over 100 companies and leading a team that helps them accelerate revenue in different ways. So it was a little bit accidental, like I said, and I actually did dive in a little bit blind. I didn't know a lot about venture capital. I didn't understand how the investment process worked. I didn't even know the basics of like where VC firms got their money, but I just said, you got startups, I want startups. And I went in a little bit blind at a time when the operational role in the startup and venture ecosystem was a little bit undefined. So that's a little bit about my story and some of the strokes of luck I had along the way.
I love that. I think the common theme, right, amongst, your story, Shruti, yours, Jennifer, and, certainly mine is this like accidental opportunity, right? I love this visual of your Jetta, right? You've got, your suitcases on top and you don't really know where that journey is going to take you. And I love that because everybody I talk to who is successful has lived many lives. The journey is definitely not over. We're in the middle of it. So Shruti, tell us, how did you differentiate yourself? Getting into this new field. What's on the horizon for you there? What do you see for the future of women? What advice do you have for somebody who's listening to your story and saying, all right, I'm inspired, I want to do this?
So I'd say in terms of, my kind of mantras that I followed in my career, I don't know that there's anything particularly unique. Obviously, believe in yourself. Don't internalize criticism. I think it's something that women professionals as well as women leaders can sometimes do. Just don't take it personally. Believe in yourself, process criticism and feedback, and just always focus on sort of becoming that better version of yourself as a leader and as a professional. And try and get rid of imposter syndrome early. I wish somebody had told me about imposter syndrome and I'd read some of those amazing pieces of research in my early 20s versus maybe 10 years later. And so none of that, I think, is singular or unique, but I will say there are principles that really stand the test of time if you're just trying to sort of make a name for yourself and carve out a niche for yourself in what still continues to be a pretty male-dominated field. And in terms of one of your earlier questions, Sloane, around how I sort of kind of marked a niche for myself in the early years of my career, especially when I was working at kind of big global companies, I wouldn't say there was maybe one ingredient or theme in particular, but one passion perhaps, and one element of my background that I brought to the table was just this interest in sort of internationally scaling businesses and products. I'd obviously had an international background myself, growing up in India and then studying and working across 3 different continents. And so as a result, a lot of the assignments that came to me and that I sought out involved taking a product or an idea or a business and helping a company figure out how you scale that across different geographies and different sort of just global contexts. And so at Salesforce, I had a chance to have some contributions into the India expansion strategy, for example, many moons ago. At SAP, I had a chance to take products that were initially built out of Silicon Valley and then work with German product teams, Asian product teams, and beyond to figure out how we really make those products successful in a global context. And I think that passion that I brought allowed a lot of projects to come to me that by definition involved global scope and global impact. So I would say it just comes back to just trying to be thoughtful and conscious about what your passions are. Just having the self-awareness of what really drives you and what is going to bring out the best performance in you and just going with that.
I love that. And the general theme of curiosity, right? And not being afraid to bring what you have to the table. So curious, Jennifer. So having experience doing playing multiple roles within the technology field. So what were some of the biggest challenges? What advice would you give to anyone who's looking to kind of straddle the different pieces of technology and what would you do differently next time?
Yeah, great question. I mean, to me, the theme is all about curiosity. When I sort of look back at what the uniting thread has been across my career and the advice that I have to folks now, it's entirely about follow your curiosity and almost everything else kind of takes care of itself. And it's really hard to know looking forward where that's going to take you and where you're going to end up. So in some ways, you almost have to release an agenda and just follow what you're interested in and what you're curious about. Like there's a great Steve Jobs quote that, you know, your path only makes sense when you look backwards and you can connect the dots. And that's very much how I feel now. I think if you'd asked me even a few years ago, I would have said to you, I've had a number of disjointed careers, right? Consulting to hedge funds to venture capital to founding a company it's not a linear path. But when I look back on it now, there are elements from each of those that I can point to that say, you know, really lead me to where I am today. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing and I wouldn't have this perspective if I hadn't done those things. And I think at each step of the way, it was just about following what did I find to be interesting and just kind of leaning into that without worrying about where it took me or what it meant or how that turned into a longer term plan. I think when I map what I've seen with both women and men who have been most successful in their careers, they're not necessarily the people who took the shiniest jobs with the best titles or the best companies or whatever. They're people who developed a passion around something and they just thought it was really interesting. And they would just ask a lot of questions. And that would cause them to go meet a bunch of people and learn more. And when people meet people who are really curious and excited about something, it's contagious, right? And then they introduce them to other people. I mean, Shruti, that's kind of what I heard when you said you met the Sapphire team. They probably saw in you someone who's just really excited and curious and interested about startups, right? And that can lead to really interesting things. And so when I look back on it, I think the times when I've had the biggest challenges are the times where I popped my head up for a second and didn't follow that and said, oh dear, where is this going? What does this lead to, right? And, you know, you kind of had like these moments of crisis where you sort of say like, am I doing the right thing? And then I would just kind of put my head back down and say like, you just got to care about the work and be interested in what you're doing. And so the thing that led me to venture capital was I always liken it to an intellectual playground or a candy land, because you really have a privilege of being able to take a very interesting bird's eye view of what's happening in technology. And my favorite part was always meeting founders who were really passionate about what they were doing. And even if I didn't share their passion for distributed storage or whatever, right? It's still contagious. Like people still like meeting people who are really curious and interested in something. And kind of similar for me on the customer side, you know, meeting technology executives who are really interested and passionate about what they were trying to drive within their organizations. And, you know, to follow your theme earlier, that's what led me to be a bit of an accidental entrepreneur, is because there was just a problem set that kept coming up that I got really curious about and had seen, you know, 15 years ago at McKinsey and said, like, this is still a problem today. Even now when I'm talking to people, why has no one solved this yet? Maybe this is something that I should go do and dig into more. So that's always kind of my biggest push to folks, is in some ways release your agenda. Don't worry about where it goes and follow your curiosity. And maybe the addendum or asterisk to that is surround yourself with the best people you possibly can. Because if you're working with or interacting with really high caliber people who are great at what they do and you're curious about something related to that, like good things happen, doors open that you couldn't even expect or design if you tried.
I love that. I love that. And it's so, I love when you're talking about passion and your face lights up. I mean, it's very obvious when you like what you do, you know, and and it's
contagious. People want to spend time with other people who are excited by what they do, even if they don't share the exact same passion. And so I think you start to see like networks of these people where you get pulled into things that you wouldn't have expected otherwise.
And the inclination for success is exponentially higher, right? When we like what we do. So what I think is really fascinating about this whole conversation, and I kind of love, is that, you know, this has nothing to do with being a man or a woman, right? This is humanity. This is how you succeed in any field, you know, particularly in technology. But to satisfy our audience, so I'm going to take this on a positive spin. So, you know, oftentimes when people ask me, oh, you're a woman leader, how difficult is it? Let's flip the script. I want to say, you know, I'm going to ask you, what advantages do you think being a woman has led to your success? And Didi's popping in right now, which is awesome, because this was the question that Didi wanted me to ask. So I'm going to ask it again really quick. But Obviously you've all been very successful and worked at multiple different places, but what advantages did your women's perspective bring to the team that you think has led to success? And maybe I'll start with Didi, since she's our new panelist.
Thank you, Sloane. Yeah, and it's an honor to be here, and I'm so thrilled to be standing virtually next to Shruti and Jennifer. I loved the commentary so far, and I'm dialing in live from the Wing Summit. So we've brought together for the first time since the pandemic over 150 customers, mostly CIOs, CXOs. So if I'm a few minutes late in joining you, forgive me. I was literally doing the job of connecting CIOs and CISOs to one another during the lunch session. But I'm thrilled to be here, and really, so one of the sessions we had this morning was on the topic of women in leadership, and one of the conversation topics was around change management. So when you think about what are some of the things that women are good at, it traditionally was viewed sort of negatively that women would seem indecisive, particularly when it came to positions in leadership. So when you're thinking about boards, why ask so many questions? Why do they feel like they need to get consensus from the room? And as it turns out, when you ask questions and have an open and curious mindset, it turns out you learn more about the other side. And this is true for any interpersonal relationship, not just necessarily how you interoperate with your team. And so, the fundamental question is, are women better at change management? Because in the course of asking those questions and uncovering questions or concerns that may make it seem like you're going deeper and creating problems, actually what you're doing is you're getting people's buy-in on what the outcome will be. Because if they're listening and they're paying attention, now you're listening and paying attention to them, and now you've dialed into what their world looks like. So when they have the opportunity to give you feedback, guess what? They're a part of the decision. So, and that's sort of, a take on, women in leadership.
I love that. I want to give Shruti and Jennifer an opportunity to talk about what has being a woman, what about your attributes has led to your success?
I'll just jump in. By the way, I agree with a lot of what Didi just said, and I think in general, and again, I don't know the research. I don't know if I should say whether women tend to be more humble or more open to admitting mistakes. I know I'm the kind of person who is, I won't say self-critical, but I'm always looking for what I could do better, and then I vocalize it with my team. So they can both learn from me as a leader in terms of me talking through my thought process of what I could have done better, owning up to mistakes I made. And I think that is, that is a trait I've seen in a lot of women leaders, but obviously it's not exclusively a trait. Like you said, these are topics of sort of cross-gender discussion, Sloane. But I do think that a lot of women leaders do have this kind of humble and open approach of, frankly, not being afraid to own up to mistakes and creating this culture where you can make good mistakes and really learn collectively from them. And the other thing I'll throw in there is that, for that subsection of women leaders and women professionals who are moms, like I am, I think that just gives you another whole vector to life. I mean, if you want to simulate combat warfare, as closely as you can, and take 2 kids under 5 to Disneyland, like I took on Monday, and you can handle anything. And I just think it's, parenting, motherhood, whatever you want to call it. It's another whole element of resilience, if you will. I know that's not every female leader out there, but that's maybe my other comment.
I love it. You're channeling your inner Brene Brown. I think women do have a little bit more vulnerability. I love that. So Jennifer, tell us, what about being a woman makes you successful?
Yeah, I mean, if I look at my career, I think I've done a tour of duty in many male-dominated industries, right? I started on Wall Street. I did management consulting, hedge funds, venture capital, technology, sort of all places that are notorious for, not having a lot of female representation. And I think those were great environments, and I loved them and found really great mentors and supporters. But I think a small part of me internalized a strong sense of other in each of those environments. And so I'll answer the question now as I think about building a team and running a company, which is we have a really strong emphasis in how do we build an inclusive culture. And how do we create an environment where people can show up to work and feel really great and feel great about being able to be themselves, and in whatever way that looks like, and not have a sense of other, because there is no other, because there is no standard. And I think that's really helped us in being able to build an incredibly high caliber team and the set of people we've been able to attract. And there are diversity implications for that as well. I was just looking at this the other day. Our team is 70% women or underrepresented minorities, which is really uncommon in technology. And it's not because we set out and said, this is a number that we're trying to hit. I think it's because we really focused on, especially kind of the early team, I think are folks who had this sense of other from places they had been before. And we said, how do we create a place where no one feels a sense of other ever again? And they instead feel like we're all kind of part of the same team. So I don't know if you call it an advantage or not, but it's a heightened awareness that I think has meant that we as a company have just really focused on creating a great work environment. And that has real big implications, I think, for the quality of talent that we've been able to assemble.
I love that, and the intentionality of it. Well, if you can believe it, we are actually at time. In fact, we are over time, but everybody has been so kind. This conversation has been so organic and fun that we've just kind of kept it going. So I want to thank all of you for your candor, for your success, frankly. The focus of this MTEK conference was the future. So the future is up to all of us women in leadership and technology. Think about who you're mentoring today. What young women are you bringing up? Because the future is ours. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Well, here we are at the end of our first annual MTEK Summit, where we talk everything emerging tech. What a day. We heard thought leadership from some of the most recognizable venture capitalists in the world. We got to hear some exciting new tech from early stage companies that's ready to launch. You know, Evotech Labs looks at over 2,000 companies every year. We meet with around 200, and we come up with a couple of dozen technologies that we think are ready for the enterprise. If that's of interest to you, or if you have a specific project that we could help with, please reach out to your contact at Evotech or reach me. I'm jeff@evotech.com. From here, I just want to say thank you for the time and the attention. Hope the day was good information, and I wish you well for the rest of the day. Take care.